Boruto 2 Blue Vortex chapter 33 has just been released, and what we do end up seeing in this chapter, it looks like the conclusion of this current arc, as we are finally seeing the end of Mamushi, and none other than Inojin, as the MVP of this arc, played the most massive role in it coming to an end. This is what we see end up happening in this chapter, as this arc has made Inojin one of the most loved characters that I've seen in a while. This is something that we haven't really seen in Boruto ever before, a side character really grow to be beloved due to his actions, as although he isn't that strong, Ikimoto still found a way to make this character quite important. But before we come to discuss all of that did end up taking place, we're first going to start off by the cover and analyzing it. We see that Sarada is the cover for this chapter, and the title of this chapter is The Broken Future. The side text that we see is the heavy price to pay in order to protect. And this is exactly where we start off in the chapter, with Boruto who is holding onto Sarada, who is bleeding. We see dozens of Mamushi clones, it looks like hundreds in just this single section in this panel. And the side text that we receive, Sarada and Kawaki collapse, the plan is failing in the face of 1,000 Mamushis. What will Boruto and the others do? And this is what we come to find out in this chapter. And just like a lot of people suspected, yes, Kawaki did run out of gas, as that's exactly what he ends up telling Himawari. We see that Sumire is quite worried, asking Boruto what exactly is Sarada's current condition. Where we have a Boruto who says that she is still breathing and it doesn't seem like her life is in danger. However, he is worried about the injury of her eye due to the Mangekyo Sharingan. And we see that Himawari is coming to see what is taking place, where she starts to heal Sarada. One thing that is quite intriguing is the fact that Boruto knows about the Mangekyo Sharingan and potentially the strain that it causes to Sarada. So, since this is the first time that we see Boruto actually see Sarada go through these problems, I think this could give credence towards Boruto playing a massive role in giving her the information necessary about her eye. Remember back in the days where we did see that Boruto wanted to say something to Sarada, but he said that he would do it later. Is this what Ikimoto was hinting towards, where Boruto is going to relay information to Sarada regarding Sasuke, where Sasuke left information to Boruto to give to Sarada concerning the Mangekyo Sharingan? Sasuke clearly referenced it when he was talking to Boruto when he was about to be sealed into a tree, and since he did see Sarada use the Mangekyo Sharingan and knows everything about it, the fact that it will slowly degrade her eyes, maybe Sasuke told something to Boruto and Boruto is now about to reveal it in these upcoming arcs, where maybe it's a specific location in which Sarada can go to get another pair of eyes. Maybe Orochimaru can play a role into this, but I'm really curious as to what exactly Sarada is going to do now after this arc, because I believe that this is the last missing piece before she may end up going to fight Hidari, or maybe it's after that, I don't really know. But one thing that we do end up seeing is that Himawari says that she fixed the damage caused by the blood vessels, however she doesn't really know if it will affect her vision. We see that the Mamushi clones are laughing at everything that is going wrong as two people went down. Damien is egging them on, telling them that they should just come and fight him, where we see dozens of Mamushi clones going towards Damien. We see an Inojin that is pretty much taken aback at everything that is taking place and really sees like, yo, there's really nothing that we can do. There's nothing that seems to be going right, especially what is going on. Where we see a Kashin-Koji who is basically explaining how his ability works, because Inojin wants to find out what he knows about the future, if he can use the ability again to tell him what he can do to prevent it from going wrong. Inojin is quite concerned at what is taking place, and this is where we have a Kashin-Koji who explains his ability prescience and the fact that he gets updates periodically. And we see that Inamoto is also paying attention quite closely to what is going on, and then he understands a little bit more about this ability. So he must have put pieces together, figuring out that the Shibai cells that was given to Kashin-Koji by Himamato is what has allowed him to obtain this ability. So he knows exactly what Amado's powers are, and that explains the tactics that he has with Boruto. Now, we end up going back to Damon who is fighting the Mamushi clones, and he is basically beating them. But we see a lot of them who are simply distracting Damon, and then the majority are going to go meet with Ida. This point was where I really thought it might have been cooked for Ada, but we end up seeing that Boruto comes in clutch, who ends up slashing multiple of the Mamushi clones to take them out all at once. This was quite close to being Ada's last few moments on Earth. And then we see a Damon who is very upset and ends up using his reflective ability by grabbing the face of the Mamushi clones to basically reflect all of their intent. And we slowly start to see that Damon is running out of gas. Damon is getting tired. Mitsuki ends up joining in that when he is fighting multiple of the Mamushi clones. We see him take a couple down, and we see Boruto, who is asking Shikamaru exactly what to do. Then we end up going back to the conversation between Inojin and Kashin Koji, where Inojin is slowly coming to understand what exactly he must do. The more they talk about the abilities that Kashin Koji has, and with everything that Ikimoto has been hinting with in the past, Inojin slowly comes to put things together. The fact that the Mamushi clones have one singular consciousness. The fact that we have a character like Inojin who can go into a person's body and hijack it using his own consciousness. Amado's line of thinking, Amado's deduction, is what allows Inojin to come up with this new plan to be able to deal with the Mamushi clones. This is exactly what Kashin Koji wanted Inojin to come to understand what exactly must be done. But Inojin knows exactly what the repercussions may be, and that's most likely why he didn't tell Inojin to do this word for word, especially knowing the risks that come with it, but wanted Inojin to come to this conclusion. And when Inojin comes to this conclusion, he reveals to us that this is a conclusion that he reached in a couple of futures that he saw. And that's where Inojin is basically going to use his own consciousness to take over the Mamushi clones and then sacrifice his eyes. Inojin understands that quite clearly, and that's exactly what he is about to do. When we go back onto the battlefield, we see the Mamushi clones that continue to batter on Ada and Damon. Ada is trying to run away, but the Mamushi clones are quite fast. They are making their way back to Ada and Damon. We see that Boruto ends up playing a huge role in allowing them to escape. Boruto is slashing multiple of the Mamushi clones while Ada is continuing to run away. We have a Shikamaru who is kind of lost for words. I'd say that Shikamaru, if this was Naruto, if we're being 100% honest, Naruto would have been in the battlefield. We do know that Naruto and Shikamaru have different strengths, but this is one of the parts where we do end up seeing that in a couple pages afterwards, we see that Inojin ends up turning off the ability. And we have the Hokage, who is supposed to protect the village, but is really unable to have any sort of information to be able to do so because he is not on the battlefield. So although I do understand that we have a character like Naruto and we have a character like Shikamaru who have different strengths and weaknesses, we do see some of the weaknesses with Shikamaru's approach, where he is fully aware that he is not strong enough, where he is fully aware of his powers not being on the same level of Naruto. However, when he is not able to see the battlefield and thus cannot use his strategy, his overall effectiveness and overall aid in the battlefield is quite diminished compared to a Hokage like Naruto, who is simply going to be in the battlefield fighting with everybody else. But Inojin ended up stopping the jutsu not because it was a mistake, but because it was very intentional. We see a Kashin Koji who prays for Inojin's success as he is reverse summoned into the battlefield. We see Inojin pull up with aura, and that's the last thing I could ever say about Inojin's character, because who told you, who would even imagine somebody saying that in the past, Inojin with aura? But yes, forgive me Inojin for all the previous slander, you are truly a shinobi, as this is what he ends up doing. He pulls up to the battlefield, ends up asking Shikadai to stop one of the movements of the Mamushi clones, where it is at that moment that he decides to use his ability. we see that Inojin ends up using his ability and captures the consciousness of one of the Mamushi clones, where he is now in control. And just like Amato deduced, since they share the same pool of consciousness, Inojin is not just taking over the consciousness of one Mamushi clone, he is taking over the consciousness of the entire Mamushi group, where he is now in control of all of them. This is where all of the Mamushi clones halt at their location. Damon and Ada are confused at what exactly is going on, but it is because of Inojin's ability. And the plan doesn't stop there. The real sacrifice comes with what ends up happening next. Amato's theory is confirmed, and we see Sumire explain this, the herd mentality, a single collective consciousness. That's how Inojin's ability was able to take them over. Inojin is truly the weakness to all of them. We see them all stand in their location with Inojin being laid out to be in control of their consciousness. Then we end up seeing Inojin truly start to work, where he remembers what exactly is the weakness of the Mamushi clones, their eyes, which prevents them from being able to multiply. This is where, by using his understanding of Damon's abilities, he ends up thinking about crushing Damon's eyes, and then the ability is reflected. Damon ends up reflecting that intent back to that Mamushi clone, and since they share a collective consciousness, it is reflected to all of them, where it is the intention of every single one of the Mamushi clones that they wanted to harm Damon's eyes, and thus their eyes were harmed. But the real sacrifice is that this is also reflected onto Inojin. Because just like we have learned in the past, anything that happens to the body to the person that Inojin ends up controlling will also happen to Inojin himself. Inojin ends up losing both of his eyes. Now we see Himawari who comes up and is trying to save Inojin's eyes. She is starting to heal him as fast as possible. We see that all of the Mamushi clones end up falling to the ground, and we see Himawari who ends up helping. They slowly start to disintegrate all around the village. I'm actually pretty much surprised because there were a lot of Mamushi clones that were in the village in addition. This does go back to what Kashi and Koji said, where Kashi and Koji ended up saying that a lot of people ended up losing their lives in this battle. So most likely what was the case is that the more and more they ended up multiplying, the dumber they became, and thus at first it seemed like they didn't want to harm the citizens of Konoha, but the dumber they became, the more they stopped following that logic and started attacking anybody in their vicinity. But Boruto, waiting with Aura, ends up grabbing one of the torso bulbs. He grabs it, and then Kawaki immediately questions him. What exactly is he going to do with that? Where we have Boruto who reveals the fact of the rotting, since we have Bug who isn't really a shinobi, and thus his chakra reserves are not that much. The longer and longer he stays in this tree state, the more likely it is for him to rot, and due to that he would die. This ends up telling us that characters like Sasuke, the longer and longer they are, for a character like Sasuke, he has pretty large chakra reserves compared to even normal shinobis, so he has a higher chance of still being alive, but it explains why Boruto is in such a rush to be able to save Sasuke, because the longer and longer he stays there, the more likely it is that Sasuke ends up rotting. So the goal for Boruto is to give Bug back his Soulthorn bulb. However, we have Code who is laying in the outlurks. We have Code that has placed his claw mark next to the tree. What exactly is going to happen when Boruto ends up trying to put back the torso bulb, as he will not see the claw mark as it is directly behind Bug's body? This is what we'll be able to figure out in the next chapter. So we leave off at a bit of a cliffhanger. This is the side text that we get. Boruto plans to revert Bug back from his tree form, but what is the mysterious eyes that lies in wait? Those eyes are the eyes of Code. And what exactly will happen? You guys have to let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. How would I rate this chapter? I would rate this chapter a cool 7.5 out of 10. I really do love what we end up seeing with Inojin. Inojin's character has completely grown with me, and the ability and storytelling that we have Ikimoto showcasing, something that I didn't expect, I wasn't, however, too moved with the conclusion of this arc. I feel more like this arc is a setup arc that is setting up what we will see in the future, the next big arc, but it is an arc that I really enjoyed. We see characters like Inojin that played a massive role. Now, I hope we see more from Mitsuki, Shikadai, and Chocho, and there's definitely a lot that we're going to come to figure out, as none of the bullet points that Ikimoto laid out, being things like Boruto and his sword's abilities, and the fact that Momoshiki and him have made a deal, none of it has been completely fired. So they're saving this for another arc. So what we're going to come to figure out in the next arc to come is going to be something that is truly interesting. But for the moment, you guys let me know your thoughts, comments, and concerns in the comment section below. It's been your boy Dynasty, and I'm out, bruh.